things about the identity security, machine identity, and how the attacker are exploring something. And that's the idea of this conversation. So my name is Filipi Pires, and let me introduce myself. I'm head of Identity Threat Labs and global product advocate at Segura. And I will explain more what is exactly Segura, the company that I've been working for the last 4 years. But now I'm responsible for, do investigations about the threats, understand how the attacker are, they are exploring identities and misconfigurations, all those type of identities, and how they can go inside all those organizations, and how they are creating new malwares, using different techniques to explore vulnerabilities. And I'm as well, I'm a part of the advocacy team. And not only that, but I'm totally involved with the different communities, and I'm director of the sponsors at the Red Team Village. Red Team Village is one of the biggest village at DEFCON. DEFCON is basically one of the biggest hacking conference in US. That will happen in August in Vegas. And I'm speaker as well of this village, and I'm a part of the core team. I found this community called Red Team Community. Basically, this community is involved with all those type of offensive security, mainly in Brazil, in Latin America. And by the way, I'm Brazilian, but I'm talking here from Portugal. Usually, I'm based here in Portugal. Sometimes I'm based on US because of my job. Sometimes I need to travel to be there, and sometimes I need to travel for some countries like such as, for example, Dubai, Saudi Arabia. That I went last year. I was participating at Black Hat Middle East last year. I was in JISEC a few months ago at JISEC. It's a super nice experience that I was there. And usually I need to travel to talk in some conference. And I'm as well AWS builder, part of the program of AWS. So this is few informations about me. And again, it's a pleasure. And if you'd like to know more topics about the community things or about cloud, I'm here to help you if you want. Okay. So basically, what is Segura? Actually, we previously we called Senia Segura. This is a kind of different name. Basically, the first part of the name, Senia, we know that's quite different to pronounce, but like the Senia, it means password, and Segura, it means secure. It's a Brazilian company. We are globally right now. So we decide to change the name just to be more focused on identity. And one of the strategy behind of this change is because of the short name. And not only that, but if you think more about the password, so nowadays when you need to authenticate something, you can use a user and you can use a password as well. However, probably you heard something about some technology called passwordless. In this case, you don't need to using more password. Or even if you talk about no human identity, it means that you don't need to using password as well. So because of that, we don't use more Senia, it means password. We just using Segura. Why? Because the sound, it's quite similar to secure, and the meaning is the same. So that's the characteristic, and that's why we decide to change our name. Okay, cool. So as I said in the beginning, so this conversation I will divide in 2 or 3 different parts. The first part is more about some concepts, just to putting every people on the same page. And the second part is about more challenge. And the third part is more technical part. Okay. So if not a technical, I would like to explain, I will explain more things about that. And if you're more a technical guy, you know, uh, like we go more in the end of the presentation, I will share some codes and some possibilities how the attacker are exploring misconfigurations. Okay, so that's the idea. So first concept we called machine identity. And by the way, I'm looking my right side here. It's my right side. I don't know if your right side, but it's my right side here. I'm looking the chat here. So if you have any questions, so you can type the chat here, the questions, and I can answer during our conversation. For me, it's not a problem. So if you have any doubts, question, let's put in the chat and I will see here and I will answer you. So I know this when you are online or virtually, it's quite complicated to make some questions, but you can type the doubts there or questions and I will answer you okay, if you need. Okay, so first concepts about machine identity. So basically machine identity means or refers and specifically identification and management of machines. So as I said in the beginning, usually when we using something to authenticate, we are based on a user. So this user requires to have the password and the username, let's say. So you have the username and you have a password sometimes behind. And when you talk about the organizations or network or even infrastructure, for example, we have not only human identity, but you have the no human identity. So when you talk about no human identity, we are talking about the how you can integrate those type of things to authenticate without password. In this case, we can include, for example, server, applications, containers, and other digital entities. So basically, this is the way that you can communicate between one side and another side. So basically, for example, if you have a CI/CD pipeline, so CI/CD continuous in deployment, continuous integrations, you have those type of things, and you need to have the token in one side. This token will be responsible for integrating those DevOps environment. So you don't requires to have the user or password. You requires to have the token. Of course, above this token, you need to have the permissions according these integrations. And using this integration, you can include, like, as I said, server, application, or even containers and other communications. And that's important to understand what is exactly machine identity. So, of course, we can mention that here as well. We can mention that the API to using to integrate something, or even if you have a kind of publicly API for some reason, you can expose this API. So the way that you can put in some security restrictions is based on the policy, and those policies that you put inside or behind of this, not all behind, but above this API is based on the authentications policies and so on and so forth. But the API, in fact, is one of the type of machine identities. So that's important to understand here. Okay. Cool. So what is our vision about machine identity management? So this is interesting and important concept to understand how you can apply the configuration. So the first steps will be the discovery steps. So when you find or how you can find those identities, those machine identities. So basically you can find it those servers, containers, or as I said, DevOps pipelines, or maybe different workloads in the cloud, or even source code. All those type of things is about how you can discover, how you can figure it out, those type of things inside of your infrastructure. Because I know I was talking yesterday night in one specifically podcast that I recorded. I was talking about the kind of challenge that we have nowadays about the observability. So that's a big challenge that you have, because how you can protect your environment if you don't have any idea how those application servers are connected. So that's the important thing about the discovery. Is the first step of a management of identity, of the machine identity. The second one is looking to the governance, or in this case, how you can apply those best practices. Who is responsible for to have the ownership of the privilege and these specific identities, or the entity, because it's different. Identity is one thing, is an entity is another thing. How you can enforce policy, or because let's suppose, for example, I'm Filipi and I'm working in a specific company. Let's call this company Filipi Software, for example, and I hiring another guy to work with my company. So when the guy is hiring by my talent acquisition team, so they should do the onboarding process, and during this onboarding process they will receive a kind of access to the environment, type of access, like, for example, mailbox, or even like a Jira access, or maybe ClickUp access, or Slack access, whatever application you use in log, like Teams, for example. All those access are based on specifically identities that you have. And of course, you can put in all those new hires in the same group policy, or you can using this policy enforcement to using in the right way. And not only that, but to have the access control and have the traceability about the policy. And when this user, for example, is receiving a promotion, like, okay, they started as a junior guy, then it's going to the plano position or go to the senior position. For each kind of level that they have inside of the organization, we should look into the access control level, maybe enforce the policy, or even doing the access review. And of course, all those things are totally involved with the compliance. And not only that, but maybe like I could use another term here called zero trust. I know that maybe can be a kind of buzzword, but like zero trust is not exactly about tools, about product. When you talk about zero trust, we talk about the three P's. What was that mean? Three P's, Filipe. First P, it means process. It's based on the each level of the access control, compliance stuffs, ownership you organize in your organization. The second one is about the second P, it's about people. So how you can inform those people about the first P, the process. So first P is process, the second one is people, and the third one is product that will deliver the security things about the policy enforcement. So those three pieces about the zero trust. Okay, let's keep in to the next steps is about the automated or the automation process. So how you can orchestrate those type of things. One of the things that I like to mention here to you guys is about the just-in-time access. So let's suppose that you have a kind of action or activity to do during the weekend. So think with me. So how I should give this access to the developer team, for example, or even the analyst team, or even at a financial team, for example. I could give the access for the whole month, or I just could provide the access just in time necessity or just in time activities. We can call whatever name you want, but just like, okay, I have a specific activity to do in the weekend. I can provide the access during this weekend, a certain time of days, and after that, I will like retire, not retire, but like I will provision this access. So that's the way that you can work in the just-in-time access or using the list privilege concept. This is based on automation because like every single time you need to providing access for many different people thinking about security or identity security. You should like rotation secrets when you need to do these kind of things. We need to like revoke or even update certificates based on different applications, and sometimes it's quite difficult to have the observability about the how many certificates you have in your organization. I know that's quite challenge, but that's one of the things that you should looking for the machine identity management. And the third one is more secure or segura, not secure. I mean, I'm kidding. Like be more secure. So like improving the security posture. As I said, least privilege is one of these concepts, or even security posture. So how you can increase those security configurations in your environment, and not only that, but looking to the ITDR and behavior. For example, if you let's suppose that your company works working in Middle East, for example, and you have in your organization Middle East, or maybe your organization is in the US, for example. So let's compare those two different countries. However, we can see or you or in your identity access management solution, whatever you can see many tentatives of the authentications for a certain user, not based on Middle East, and not based on the US, that you where you have office, you can see a kind of tentative of authentications in Brazil, for example, where you don't have any employees, or even you don't have any applications working there or any customers working there. So that's a kind of that's a kind of weird behavior. So I should look into these kind of things, because even if my solutions block those tentatives, so why someone is trying to authenticate in Brazil if I don't have any business with Brazil? So you can understand those type of things. So that's a kind of behavior that you're looking for. Okay, nice. Let me explain more about the other term called high value target. Okay, so basically high value target, it means it comes to the military terminology. It's refers to the specifically term, or specifically, how can I say that? It's a kind of person or research that one enemy commanders requires to complete the missions. It's a simple like this. So unfortunately, we are seeing a lot of things on TV or news about the worms in different countries. So basically, when you talk about the high value target, is the most important person or even the research that this enemy requires to complete the mission. So that's the way that you can understand about high value target. However, when you think about the technology, we need to think, okay, in each organization has specifically staff member or a board member. So if those guys is compromised, what is the single point of failure? What is the impact with that? So that's the way that you can think about high value target in the technology perspective. So who is the person, or who is the even the person or even the application, if this is exploited, what is the impact in the organization? So when you think about the high value target in the technology perspective, usually we think, okay, maybe it's a kind of C-suite, C board, like a chief executive or chief information or chief security or chief financial, whatever C, whatever chief, or maybe as a board member or senior executive or directors. However, if you see here in the presentation, I can mention that something about the teams and people with high or elevated privilege in your organization. What that means, Filipe, basically? In other words, it's basically every people that has access to the sensitive or high stack project. Let me just give you a simple example. So probably you know how the developers works, the guys responsible for doing code. So basically, they should use sometimes the VS Code, one specific application they need to use. And this specifically blessed application requires the high privilege. So based on that, the security guy need need to give the access to this developer, because the VS Code requires the administrator access, and you give the administrator access for the whole, endpoint on the whole machine, the whole laptop, for example. Another example that I can share with you is about, for example, two things: financial team here and the, let's suppose, the people or HR team or talent acquisition team. So those different teams, I'm not talking about technology right now. I'm talking about the business. Okay. So financial teams, let's suppose if your financial team use a kind of SAP application, for example, that requires the high administration value target, because just because the application requires the administrator access. You know what I'm trying to explain to you is not about, okay, C-level, director guy, senior guy, or even the security team, but because of the business, I need to give the high privilege to the financial team or the marketing team or the people team. And that's the thing that you should thinking more about: identity security, because in the end of the day, we are talking about identities. So chief information security officer or whatever, chief executive officer, this is a kind of identity. However, this reception or the receptionist of the hotel or the receptionist of the hospital, or even the junior guy from the financial sector or financial team, are identities, and they need to be more receiving the proper look into the specifically security posture for each identity in our organization. I know it's quite a challenge, but we need to look into that. Okay. The other concept is called attack vector. Basically, attack vector is a method used by the cyber attackers or the um, APT groups, whatever, not a hacker. Um, because hacker, like, is a creative mindset. But Felipe, the hacker do bad things. If they do bad things, they becomes a cyber criminal, not a hacker. Hacker is how you can look into something and how you can use your creative mindset to create new things and to discover things and helping companies. But if you do things in the bad way, you becoming a cyber criminal. That's the concept behind of the hacker. But it's a topic for another conversation, okay? And basically, the attack vector, as I said, is the way that the attacker is using to compromise a system or organization. And And of course, it's just to clarify, don't be confused to another term called attack surface. Let me give you an example, not technical. So if you have a big house, 2 floors, okay? So imagine that this big house has in the first floor, you have a front door, you have a back door, and you have a bunch of windows in the first floor. And on the other hand, you have the second floor. You don't have any access directly to the second floor. Only going to the first floor, walking to the 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 stair, for example, go to the second floor, and you can see some windows in the second floor. However, the way that you can go inside of this house is just for the door, front and back door, and the windows. However, when you think about the attack surface to go inside of this big house, we have a few possibilities to go inside. This is the surface of possibility, like some 2 different doors and different windows. This is the surface of the attack in this big house, first floor and second floor. The vector is the way that you will be using for compromise the for the front door, or even the back door, or even some window, how you can break the window. So that's the how you can break the window. So that's the way that you can divide those different concepts here. Okay, nice. So let's go to the most common attack vector. One of these is malware. This is a malicious software. The second one is not you don't have any priority here, but it's most common is a ransomware. This type of attack that cryptograph your environment. It requires a payment, or the attacker can use in a phishing. Is a kind of example of common attack vector. Phishing basically when you receive a kind of email, requiring for you to click in some specifically emails, or doing a payment, or doing kind of actions. They try to phishing you. Okay, but on the other hand, there are kind of human errors. And when you think about the machine identity and identity security, all those usually is based on human error. So that's the main takeaway that I would like to share with you after this conversation. Okay, so based on this human errors, we can see mainly having weak credentials when you apply with the integrations with different applications, using poor encryptions that can be, break for the any attacker, or even misconfigurations when you enable and specifically misconfigurations from different applications that you have. And those different human errors allow you, or allowing the attacker to access a sensitive information via privilege escalation. So how they can, escalate the privilege inside of the organization. So that's the point here when you talk about the vector. The other one is attack path. Okay, so attack path basically is the visualization chain of the events. So basically is the graph, in the graph way that you can see how the attacker are doing actions, or how they are walking inside of the organization. It's more like a visualization chain that you can see the events. Like this picture, I know this picture is not exactly a graph, but this is basically is a kind of visualization of the chain that you can see a type of attack. This picture is from the WASP and risky management, I think, or risk of something. And this is one of the ways that you can see how the attacker do kind of attack, basically. Okay, so here we have the threat agent responsible for attack, and specifically victim. The attack vector had I explained previously to you. One of the ways, for example, using misconfigurations, one of the idea. Explore security weakness, basically weakness such as, for example, misconfigurations is a kind of weakness, or even if you have any application exposed to the internet with some vulnerabilities, it can be a kind of weakness. And when the attacker go inside here, they have a control, or they can bypass the security controls of your environment. Once they have inside, they can go to have to the technical impacts, or even the business impacts. When you talk about the business impact, is basically is about, for example, if you have an e-commerce, or if you have a hospital, or even if you have a financial company. So imagine if your workloads or your app stop it during for 4 hours. Did you can imagine like how is the financial impact in your organization? So that's the thing you should thinking. Okay, so basically this is the attack path way that you can figure how the attacker are trying to explore you. And the last but not least term is about choke point. I really like this term. Why I like it? Because basically this is the converge, the strategy location of multiple attack path. I explained to you what is exactly attack path, but basically when you have the converge moment, this is the choke points. Okay. Do you remember my first example about the big house? Okay, remember big house, first floor and second floor? Cool. So think with me. Imagine if this house has a room in the second floor. In this specifically room, we or you have in this room and specifically vault with $1 billion US dollar inside of this specifically vault. You should protect this vault. And for the attacker to get inside of this room, they have a kind of multiple ways to go into this room. They can go inside for the front door and go upstairs, walk into the aisle in the second floor, and walk into the end of this house here and open the door in the room, because this room don't have any window. They just have this only single door, and they go inside of this room. They will find the vault. The other possibility is go for the back door, walking to the stair, going to upstairs, walking to the aisle as well, and go directly to the door, open the door, and finding the vault. Or the attacker can break some windows in the first floor, go into the upstairs, walk into the aisle, and finding the vault in the door in the room, um, in the room in the end of the big house in the second floor. Or the attacker can try to break some window directly in the second floor, but they should walk into the aisle and finding the room in the end of the house and finding the vault. So if you see in all those ways, I mention it one single word, very or sometimes the same. If you remember, I mentioned while. In the second floor, there is a while. This while is the converge moment where multiple attacks can happen to find the vault, but just the converge moment is in the aisle. So that's the thing interesting about choke point. Like this picture, for example. I know that here this picture is quite technical, but it doesn't matter if it's technical or not, but just to explain to you here. So I have here 4 users here, Anna, Bill, Ted, James, and Filipi's, and in this lab, for example. So in this orange color, for me seems like orange. And those guys, as they are a part of the same group policy here in this another color here, and this color we call AWS group. So those users, they are part of the different access group. However, they have a converge moment because of this specifically permission in the cloud. Once I know that, I can go deeply and I can like uh, revoke this access from those 5 users here. So once I do here, I do this kind of like revoke an access or adjustment of the access, I can protect better my environment because this is the conversion moment of these attackers. Okay, so cool. I explained some concepts. So let me go to the second part of our conversation. Talk about some challenges in the cloud, because we talk about the identities again and machine identities. So one of the challenge that we have, and probably you have this challenge as well, is about the how many security breaches can find in cloud. And most of our customers, or even the people that I'm talking for the last few years during the conference that I've been participating, is mainly due to the misconfiguration. You can imagine 90% is about misconfigurations. It's because someone's enable and specifically configurations, and they using bad choices. And if you see 76% of the company using at least two different security on a security, two different cloud service providers, or maybe AWS and Azure, or maybe GCP and Alibaba, or maybe AWS and Okta, or maybe whatever different on a minimal two. I'm talking just two at least. And 33% of identity breaches are related to the compromised privilege accounts. And again, remember in the beginning of the presentations when I mentioned something about the high value target, I mentioned something about every people that has access to the high stack project. So you can imagine if I set some wrong configuration to the specific user, they can be exploited for the attacker. Okay, so the question is how that is a lot of to manage, isn't it? So that's is a big challenge because if you see here in AWS, we have a more than 18,000 permission to manage it, and even more than 16,000 API methods uh, to manage it. This is quite challenging, right? And if you think about Azure, it's about over 20,000 no actions in Azure RBAC or Reback Access Control or role-based access control. Okay, so it's quite challenge when I saw these numbers. And if you see here about the GCP or the Google Cloud, we can see more than 11,000. So just a simple math here. If you see simple math, we are talking about almost 55,000 possibilities to the attacker. So now think with me. I'm talking about 50,000 possibilities, okay? So you can if you are good in math, let me just try to multiply one, or maybe let me multiply two users for 5,000. We have 100,000, right? It's a simple math. So just for two, imagine if you have a two users in your organization, and if you use three cloud providers like I'm showing to you right now. So there are in a minimal 100,000 possibilities for the attacker explore your environment. It's quite crazy, right? I'm feeling more sad with that, but like that's quite challenge. I know that's totally challenge. And so what are the challenges in the cloud environment? So how much more challenge we have? We have a large attack surface, as I said, because I'm just giving an example about two users. So let me go back here. Okay, Filipe, I just have an AWS, 18,000. So let's multiply for two users. So 18 plus 2, we can have 36,000. It's keeping bigger, right? Keep it totally bigger if you just have a one single AWS or one single cloud. Okay, if you have a GCP, it's just almost 22,000. Can be like keeping too much, like it's a big, because of that, you can see the challenge. It's a large attack surface. And it's totally excessive permissions on identities or because again, remember those relationship between each group policy or each user. We have a very lack of a visibility because that's the thing that I mentioned in the beginning of the in the conversation, how I can protect my environment if I don't have any idea how my applications or how my workloads work. I don't have any visibility. This is the kind of lack sometimes that we have. And of course, we can see the increased complexity in many different vulnerabilities in the market as well. And not only this, so how you can enable the regulatory fines from data uh, protection laws depends on the country that you live. You can see those type of challenge, right? And that's the thing. And let me bring you one more challenge in the clouds. One is like in the past we had in the past we had one single Active Directory, one having one, two, or three Active Directory, and those administrators guy were there who I can protect. Nowadays, it's quite different because when you have a cloud environment, or even if you have a hybrid environment, so we have many development team accessing many applications. Another challenge, remember, to be more automated, you need to have the DevOps team. Those DevOps teams, they need to access many systems as well. We should, like enable access to the database teams. We have a cloud team responsible for providing every architecture infrastructure for the whole company. And you have as well the business unit leaders requiring you the access to the cloud environment. And maybe you are thinking, okay, who could be or who is or each teams requires privileged access. So that's a quite challenge to figure about, okay, each teams require this access, and we have C levels requiring access to the cloud, and we have a marketing team because they are creating the different like advertisement actions or activities or even publishing things in the social medias to doing a kind of awareness of the advertisement for the company, and they require access to the cloud. And we have nowadays remote workers for many companies or even a hybrid cloud. They requires the access. And not only that, but we can see the insider threats. The question is, who could it be in this case, like the insider threat? Sometimes we think, okay, the insider threats is like, okay, it's a kind of move, like the guy from a movie, the cinema, that can explore, work in the darkness, but it's not this way. Like basically the cyber criminals, hiring people just to put in misconfigurations in your environment, and that's the way that it works. Okay, they hire those people to open the door and it's using the misconfiguration because it's a kind of a user problem, misconfiguration. Okay, and they don't work in the darkness; they work in the light way, let's say. Okay, and if you need to think, okay, what would be the risk if happen any data breach in my environment? So you should think about that, or you should go to more deeply for each identity to be more, secure in your environment. Okay, so let me go more deeply, more technical things. And I'm trying to explain more, not too technical. If you're not technical, I'm so sorry. If you are too technical, I'm trying to put in the good words both for both side here. Okay, so I'm just giving an example about AWS identity access management. You can, using this type of attack, the same concept in different cloud providers, such as, for example, OCI, Oracle Cloud, or even, for example, Azure or GCP or Alibaba. The only thing that you need to think is the way that the attacker explore misconfiguration. Of course, each cloud service provider work in a different way. Just to give an example, the AWS AAM works in using API and permissions and organization level and account level. So in the GCP is quite similar. In Azure, they works with using a subscription. So in the Oracle Cloud, it's quite similar to AWS. For you need to understand how your cloud provider works, and you can do the same idea, the attacker. So just what is exactly AWS AM services? Basically is the identity access management services responsible for control the all resources in the AWS. Okay, they centralize the permissions and they control who is authenticated and who is authorized to access that type of resource. And if you don't know that, let me just clarify. So in the past, we have a hardware. And after that, we move into the virtualization when you have the hypervisor in the first layer, and the hypervisor will create for you the virtual machines. When you move into the cloud, it's a kind of different way. You need to think more about the puzzle. You have many services, and those services are connected to works. Okay, and this connection is just possible because the identity access management resource. So basically, the IAM will be responsible for telling you, okay, this, let's say, uh, this CPU can be integrated with the memory and can be integrated with the hard disk. So once they have all those resources connected, you can run the instance, you can run the virtual machine in the cloud. So that's the simple concept that I'm telling you right now. Okay, so this is the way that you can enable policies and permissions in the cloud. In AWS, in fact, you have a statement. Basically, it's a kind of block or part of this policy management, and you can use in using user interface or UI, or even you can use in the JSON file, as you can see here. But basically, the important information you need to have this inside of this statement is the effect. It can be using for allow or deny, and you need to have the actions. Basically include a bunch of list of policies that you allow or denies, but this allow and this deny is related to this effect. Okay, and of course they require in some circumstance the resource is sometimes for the misconfiguration, the human error, you put in just asterisks. Okay, so here the example about the how the policy works in a UI perspective, okay, or even in UI perspective and in the JSON file here. So basically, if you see, this is the AIM read-only access, and this is a standard policy provide from AWS, as you can see here right now. And here is the statement, as you can see, for example. Okay, let me see if I can use in here my laser pointer. I'm not sure. Okay, doesn't works for me. Okay, and if you okay, it's here. Okay, this is basically the effect, in this case allow, and this is, for example, this is the action that I can list or get the IAM resource. So this is the actions, everything that I would like to list in my AWS account. I can list all those users, policies, and groups because this policy allow me to watching this, okay? And what kind of research or AWS research name I can access, Filipe? All research names. Why? Because as you can see here, they are using the asterisk. Important point in here, guys, is this is not custom policies. This is basically a standard policy from AWS, okay? So that's the important thing here in this case. Okay, let me bring some ideas to you here in this case. So basically, how the attacker can explore environment, basically. So once they should do a kind of crawler to the internet, they can try to figure or to find some AWS access keys, ID, and AWS secrets keys. Basically, this is the way that attacker can go inside into your environment. Because once they collected the AWS keys and secrets, they just type AWS configure. Once they type this in the CLI, the command line interface, or let's say in the CLI as well, they will type their AWS configure. Once they click enter, they requires the access key. If you find this information, you just copy and paste. And the second one, they requires the secret access key. You just copy and paste as well. Click enter, and for the second time, they require after just 3 standard information. You can use the full information. Don't require any more information. So basically, I create this code just to figure, or just to try to find GitHub, or in your GitHub or GitLab platform, possible AWS secrets and keys. Okay, and once you have these, you can run in your environment and you can try to figure if you can find any access in your environment. Okay, so once you have these access key and secrets, remember, access key and secrets, guys, are machine identities. Okay, so this attack is totally related to the machine identity, our main topic here. So once you get inside of the machine, the second command that you can type is, for the offensive perspective, is AWS AIM, because this is the research that you are trying to read informations. You can try and list the user in this case. Okay, and if you see here, basically I receive the access deny information. I'm not blocked. I'm receiving the access deny. Why this happened? Because I don't have a permissions to access the users, the list of users. I cannot list the policies as well, and I cannot list the group as well. As you can see here, those 3 commands that I typed here is I receive the access denied because I don't have any permissions. So now let me explain what is the impact about the specifically misconfigurations in the cloud. Okay, to set a new configurations, a custom policy in AWS, I have this kind of 5 access level group here inside of the AIM resource in the AWS. Basically, if you see here, the access level, we have a list and you have 39 actions. Inside of the read, we have a 32, write 66. This is too big because you are writing things. You have a more privilege in this case here, and you have a permission management, just 23, like is a less, but it's a permission management, and you have the 16 for tagging, okay? So let me go to creating a specifically custom policy. Once I go inside of the permission management, take a look about the all permissions management actions. I can just press here, and once I chose these options, all those things will be target. But in this case, I just would like, or will be selected. But I would like to share with you the impact about one single selected, as you can see here, the create policy version, one single action. Once I selected this, I created the one single permission or new policy that I called uh, POC, attack POC, or attack module. And I just chose the create policy version. If you see here, there is an one single action, and I will show you about the impact. And if you see here the resource, I just put policy and the asterisk. I'm not using here the asterisk for all things. If you see here, I just using asterisk for the policy perspective, not for the whole things, okay? And if I go here, this is the statement again in JSON file. Just the fact allow actions IAM create policy version in the resource, just asterisk. Once I create this manually, I went to the AWS and the Google and I asked, okay, how I can create a new policy version using JSON file. So the AWS website gave me this example. I just copy and paste here. This is a JSON file and I call attacker exploitation.json, as you can see here. And if you see the action in this case is asterisk, it's allow me to access the all informations in AWS. And not only that, but they bring me a kind of organization level information. What I did it because I just went to the Google and asked how I can creating a new full access in the AWS. And they give me this JSON file. I just copy and paste. Let's suppose I'm junior guy, I'm newbie guy, and I just copy and paste. Once I go to the Google again, I type in Google and I ask, okay, Google, how I can create the new policy version using CLI command line interface. And then bring this command. AWS AAM create policy version, policy A or any. The name of the policy is a POC attack module, and the requirement is the policy document. Remember what is the document? Attacker exploitation.json, the file that I created in my machine. And based on that, I just put in this parameter here set as a default. Once I put in there, I put in as a default. Let's see what is the impact. And remember that I had this policy here, just one single checkbox. So now I have this second one here because I put in set as a default. So they becomes a new policy version, the new version. And if you see what happened now, I just can type list use it and I can read everything I want inside of my environment, such as user whatever, Filipi whatever, Jack whatever, and many others informations. So just to clarify you, what is the big impact? But once we talk about the AWS, we talk about the two different levels. One is account level. So let's suppose, for example, and if you have your company, let me give you this example. I have here two pens, okay, black pens here. So both of those pens is about the account AWS. However, I have here another layer, and this is the other layer here. This is the organization level. This organization level can be this organization level can manage two different accounts. And imagine your organization, if you have more than one account, it's a different levels. So some organization, big organization, enterprise organization, they have, for example, more than one organization, two different organization, when you have a big group, for example, of companies. So imagine what is this impact in this specific attack. Here, we are talking about the account level and this single AWS account. Once I go here for the privilege attack, elevate privilege, or the privilege escalation here, we are talking about the organization level. I not only have an access to this only single account, however, I have an access to this account, and this account, and other accounts. You can imagine this impact. This is so big impact here in this case. Okay, okay, Filipe, how you can help me? Because you bring the problem to me right now after this conversation. It's quite complicated, and that's the big challenge, because we bring me the problem, Flip, how I can fix that. So I can bring you some ideas. So here is one of the platform that you can use in your environment. This is an open source project. The project is called cartography, is on open source. Basically, we should use in your environment. You need to have more knowledge about Neo4j database to type this kind of cipher query. You can integrate and use an API. Basically, they can collect information to your environment. You can type kind of different attacks, and you can have a big vision of that. The other tool that I can explain you or can suggest you is AWS PX. Is in this case is more focused on AWS. And here in this picture, you can see about some impact here. So let's see some users: CEO, Bill, CFO here, business management, manager James, Anna. And if you see here, there are a bunch of actions. You see how complex this kind of, you like, there are a bunch of different actions from different groups. So this is the way that you can see, or you can try to protect you. However, my company and myself, we are developing this tool. It's a totally free tool. It's not an open source tool, but it's not a paid tool. It's not a business tool. It's basically about, we are talking about the free tool. Basically, we can scan this QR code and will be redirected for this specifically tool here, the cloud security tool. It's basically, if I type here home, you receive this access here, for example. And once you receive this access, you have here you are in sandbox mode. What does that mean? Basically, you don't need to integrate with anything in your environment. If you're a student, you can use in here this platform for your graduations, your college. You can use it for your master degree, whatever. And if you have an enterprise company, you can use as well as an enterprise, because this is, again, is free of charge. Just clicking access here. Once you have this, once you disable this sandbox mode, you can integrate with your environment. So basically, here is how you can see your identities. If you click in here, identities, you can see the whole environments. You can see how many, for example, vulnerabilities you have based on misconfiguration, for example, administrator access, and administrator access, for example, user MFA, how you can fix this in the way manually. You have here the link of the documentations, and in the future, we have here the security intelligence. Once you click here, you'll be redirected here for our Gen AI to bring you the technical information, how you can copy and paste in your cloud formation. For example, if you like to use, for example, Terraform, you just click here and you just copy and paste this information here. And once you have this enabled to your environment, this is just for sandbox mode. But what is the feature of this project? Basically, you have this green button here called apply remediations. When you click in here, they will be integrated with your cloud environment, and they will fix this specifically access to you. And once they finish this, you will see this in the platform is specifically applied. Here we had a 7, now we have a 6 remediation, and here how you can manage those type of security policies. Those recommendation is based on security policy in this way here. You can integrate with your AWS, GCP, Azure. We have those 4 main cloud provider as well. You can integrate with that. We can go here in home. You can see your cloud health, for example. How is the health of your cloud environment based on those configurations? You don't need to know here about the Neo4j database. And if you go here in identities, you can go here, for example, in identities, you can go here to attack path. This is basically the feature that I created. You just click here. You can see in a graph way the attack path about, for example, attach policy user. This is one specifically attack that I created, and this is the permissions requirement in your environment, and this is the impact. And of course, we will have the security intelligence as well, the same JAI to recommend you how you can fix this. Important thing, why we have the attack path, Filipe? Because we have different layers about the permissions in our environment. So sometimes we need to looking more about the access permission level. But if I just have 5 minutes to fix my environment, how I could fix this? So to do that, you should look from the attack path perspective. So that's the way that it should look. And if I just disable here, for example, I can share it very fast about my environment specifically. I go to identities, Filipi here, and if I go here, we have the access path integration. So this is the way that you can see the access level for each user. In this case, is just for Filipi user. And here we can see the attack path. Big organization, we have, for example, 12 identities that can suffer this attack here. Okay, guys, and based on that, I finish here the presentation. This is just a few slides about the things that I mentioned to you. And if you have a question, I think we have maybe 30 seconds. And I'm looking here to the chat. If you have any questions, I can answer you. And I just would like to say thank you for the you know, the iExperts for these invitations. I'm super happy here again. And this is, we can see the labs.segura.blog. So you can find some articles that I publish. It's more technical blog. You can see the Identity Threat Lab as well. You can see my LinkedIn, my GitHub, Instagram, and X as well. Let me see the questions. What tools or technology do you recommend for managing both human and no human identities? And it's a very nice question, Simon. We can use it like it depends, and my answer is super simple. It depends of how your company is your environment. I should recommend like the Segura. It's my company. We work with it in both ways, and but another type of organizations we can try, like as I mentioned something about the open source projects. So basically, you can use in cartography. You can use in, for example, AWS PX, and there are another tools that you can try to figure about the human and non-human identities. Because again, when you talk about no human identities, we are talking about the secrets, keys. This is not exactly my pitch. Is not about a product, but we have a solution that protects you against, for example, managing secrets, managing tokens and certificates as well, digital certificates and other things like this. But this is one of my suggestions to you, Simon. And but again, what is the best for your environment? It depends. My recommendation to you, you should test Segura platform and the others platform as well. Okay, guys, we have, okay, thank you so much. And again, if you have any other doubts, we have my contact here, Simon. I really appreciate you. And I would like to, I can share with you more information about Segura, because it's not a sales pitch here, but I can put in the sales team to do a demo to you and whatever. Noran, thank you so much again for having me here. And as I said to you, I have another topics, more technical things about it, some hours that I doing some research or offensive perspective, target hunting. I'm here to help you and the whole team again. Thank you so much.